Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name Mark Paul, Justin Baker, co-host here in studio, and it's actually been a while since you were here.
Yeah.
In this beautiful little room.
Maybe like 2 weeks almost.
I know, it's crazy. A lot has changed in the NHL since, basically since the new year. This is only our second episode since the new year. We've been bad.
Busy.
But that's okay. I'd say that if there's one thing that has really taken form, is that it is the Vegas Golden Knights who have just shot up the standings, now fifth in the National Hockey League. To look and to see Nashville, Toronto, Washington now all behind Vegas.
Yep.
Whereas Vegas was they were in the bottom sixth of the league, and here we go, and they're just pouring it on, and they're finally scoring again, and 8-1-1 in their last 10.
Yeah, what's even crazier is the fact that everybody beginning of the year was like Pacific Division's the worst division in hockey. It is. And now 3 of the top 5 teams in the NHL, Pacific Division.
Yeah, is it because they get to play the other garbage teams in the Pacific? I don't know. I think there's enough garbage teams in every division to where it's, I guess you could say that about anything. I mean, granted, yes, they do get to play Los Angeles, Arizona. Doesn't hurt that Anaheim has lost now 11 games in a row.
That's just so bad.
It blows my mind. Anaheim plays Detroit at Detroit tonight. So we're recording this about 5:30 p.m. On, was it Tuesday? It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
So Anaheim going for their 12th straight loss, and somehow
Devin Shore is going to fix it all.
They're still above 500.
Yeah, that's crazy.
0-6-4 in their last 10. At least they have managed some points in overtime. I mean, those 4 points can't be understated for a team that's still vying for the playoffs. They are truly, they win tonight and they are back in the playoffs. So for losing 12 straight, they're not in the worst position ever. As well, the Edmonton Oilers have somehow managed to keep losing, but still right on that playoff bubble. Just one win away. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. Really, you've got 5-6 teams vying for that wild card, and the rest are so far in, especially in that Pacific Division. Vegas, San Jose, Calgary, all 13 points plus in the playoffs at this point. So all in nice positions. With that said, on today's show, we are going to go through every team in the National Hockey League, and we're just going to say one thing that we want them to change. That can be long-term, that could be short-term, that could be a coach, it could be a GM, it could be relocating. I don't know. Ooh. It's there any number of things that a team should do. We will talk about that. And just for fun, I think I'm going to throw Seattle at you,
okay.
Even though I just popped in my mind, but we're going to throw Seattle at you too. And we'll kind of start thinking. Teams have to start considering the fact that in 2 seasons from now, this season plus next season, at the end of next season, they will have to decide what players they want to protect.
Yeah.
And it's going to look a whole lot different than it did when Vegas was picking.
There will not be as many deals.
No, there won't be as many deals, but there is going to be, I think much better players available, because all of a sudden you've got a team like the Leafs where they were able to protect. They didn't even have to protect a lot of their guys because so many were rookies. Same with Winnipeg, and Winnipeg really got off pretty easy because they had their really young players who they didn't need to protect, and they were able to protect all their veterans. So I think you're going to see a lot of teams that before were skated through pretty easily, and now they have to make some significant decisions on personnel. So I think that there may be better players available because of that. Yes, less deals, but better players taken, at least to the eye.
Yeah.
We all thought that Vegas was getting these lesser players while they were making deals, and it ended up their deals were amazing, and they got William Karlsson and Eric Haula and Jonathan Marchessault, all these fantastic players. So, okay, with that said, we are going to go. We're going to do a little ladder here. So, well, not a ladder, but we're going to start at the top, which Tampa Bay, they're at the top of the league. And then we're going to fall all the way back down to the bottom and talk LA, and we'll go back up to the top and back to the bottom and so on and so forth, just so that we don't get, this team needs to do the exact same thing as the last team because they both suck. We don't want to have too many of those in a row, so we'll kind of mix that in. And with that said, let's start with Tampa Bay. Justin, let's hear. What's your change for the Tampa Bay Lightning?
For me, okay, you got a team that honestly is just dominating so much right now. It's kind of hard to pinpoint one thing, but I think if I had to focus in on something in particular, I would honestly say maybe a third, fourth line center guy who can win draws for them.
Okay.
They are sitting right now, I think, 13th in the league at just barely 50.4% faceoff percentage. They got their number 2 guy, Braden Point, who's below 50% right now. Stamkos is pretty much carrying the load in terms of faceoffs, and I think it'd be important to find somebody who can win those, defensive zone draws for them.
Yeah, I guess if we need to find a weakness, that could be it. Braden Point, the lowest paid player on the Tampa Bay Lightning, by the way. He's about to absolutely cash in, and Tampa Bay has exactly $6.3 million towards a cap, maybe more like 8.5 by the time the cap goes up a bit. But they are going to be hard-pressed, have to re-sign Cedric Paquette as well, and so there's going to be some parties going on. Not to mention the fact that they're losing Dan Girardi, Braden Colburn, and Anton Strawman to unrestricted free agency. So this is the time. Tampa Bay should be all in, which I think we all think they are. And to me, I'm going to say they actually shouldn't touch a thing.
Not a thing.
Don't fix what's not broken. Okay, face-off percentage. I think that in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minute with the amount of possession that this team just racks up. They get fantastic goaltending. They have no problem moving the puck out of their zone. They really have. Dan Girardi is their worst defenseman, and he can be buried pretty easily. You can really set him up for success, and he's playing with good defensemen around him and great forwards. And so, to me, just don't touch anything.
Okay.
Let's drop to the bottom and let's go Los Angeles.
LA.
Who have been just fantastic this season. Just a real nice building year from last year.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, cool, they're trying to play faster. And then comes the playoffs, and it was like that series against Vegas made them go, oh, we actually suck. And now they're playing that way. Like, they have continued to play that way. If you think not only they're 18-25-3, but that also means that they've, dating back to the playoffs, they're 18-29-3. So they've just been, in 50 games, they'd have 39 points.
Ouch. Yeah, let's get faster by signing Ilya Kovalchuk too.
Ding ding. So what are you doing if you're the Kings management?
Trying to dump all my veteran contracts. Because you look at, Cat Friendly, their top 4 forwards are 34, 34, 35, and 31 in age in terms of the guys making the money. That sucks.
They have $89,695 of cap space right now. So there's, this is a team that you got to look and you got to go, well, number one is going to be buying out somebody. To me, the guy to buy out is going to be Dustin Brown. You just buy him out and call it a day. If you get 2, you also buy out Dion Phaneuf and call that one a day. I don't think you buy out Ilya Kovalchuk because you're hoping that he can maybe, with a better team, he can maybe find his stride. And you could move Jeff Carter, but Jeff Carter's 38 by the end of his deal. So to me, it's going to be all about just who can you sell off. Maybe you can get something for a Carl Hagelin again and move him at the deadline. A Nate Thompson, a decent playoff performer. He has won a Stanley Cup, and so that's really all you can do. Or trade Alec Martinez. But there is a point where you have to go. You can't necessarily make this team even worse from the long term standpoint as well. So Drew Doughty, congratulations on signing with the Los Angeles Kings. Let's go back to the Calgary Flames, who find themselves in second place in the league. I don't think anybody would have picked that to be happening, especially doing it with a plus 40 goals. They have now passed Toronto for second place in the league. And so, yeah, it's been a crazy ride for the winning 5 in a row for the Flames right now. What do the Flames do, Justin?
try to find somebody to take James Neal off their hands, honestly.
Maybe Vegas?
I mean...
After, he was there for a while. Maybe they would take him again?
Yeah, probably not. No, I don't even know what NHL team would want him at this point. You gotta try to light the fire a little bit.
But let's say this, though. I mean, losing him isn't necessarily going to help them.
No.
You can play him on the fourth line or on the third line, or do you try to, I don't know, do something with him. I mean, they only have $1 million in cap space, just over that.
I think if you bury him too much on the third and fourth line for too long and his production never picks back up, then his value is really gone. I think at this point he still isn't too far removed from good years in Nashville and Vegas to where you can say, hey, we can get something back for him.
Oh, well, but the 5 years, it's too many. And nobody wanted to give him that extra year. That's why he signed in Calgary.
Yeah.
But is it possible, though, that, hey, maybe this year is just a weird year for James Neal and he bounces back next year? I mean, he's only 31. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he maybe just needs to tweak his game, but also the fact that he's playing on a completely different team, and this team is very good. He seems to have a different role. He was supposed to kind of do what Elias Lindholm's doing. He was supposed to play with Gaudreau and Monahan, and that didn't happen and didn't work out. And so I think he just needs to maybe find his niche. I don't think they move him yet. I think there's some time. When I look at this team, I go, this is really... Do you touch it? Is this a Tampa Bay type of like... Do you want... almost Calgary? Actually, Calgary is almost like Vegas was last year. Everything's going well for them. Yes, they've had some weird goalie things happen. They've had some injuries, but for the most part, everything's gone right. I mean, the players that especially like a Travis Hamonic, TJ Brody, they've been better. Mark Giordano's been he's in the Norris conversation. So to me, this team is maybe you don't want to mess with it.
Yeah, I think biggest thing more than anything else, they got a lot of young guys that are still the core of this team. Like you talk about Monahan, Gaudreau, Kachuk, all these young guys that are still going to develop. So don't rock the boat, I guess. Just be patient with it.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, let's go to the Ottawa Senators, who sit in 30th, 17, 24, and 5. Sitting right where you'd want them to be for a rebuilding team, except for the fact that, the Colorado Avalanche have the now the second best odds right now of getting Jack Hughes. So what do the Senators do here?
They have to either sign them soon or trade Duchesne and Stone, because those two guys, if you're trying to rebuild your team, over the next 5 years, those are going to be the guys that you build around, to get this team back in it. And if you can't sign those guys and you get nothing for them because they're going to walk.
100%. You got to get something for them. I truly think that even if both of them wanted to re-sign, I would still trade both of them.
Interesting.
I think you just got to go, we screwed up on the Duchesne trade. That was our fault. We're willing to take that. We're going to make it right. We're going to trade Stone. We're going to trade Duchesne. And we are going to rebuild and start anew. Mark Stone's great, but in three years, I don't see him being the Mark Stone that he is right now. And 3 years from now is when I see like a Shabbat. He's leading the defensemen in scoring, and they have their new core built around. And at that point, Mark Stone is maybe overpaid, and it's only going to hurt you. And I think his value is the highest right now. And so I think you see what you can get for Mark Stone. Now, same thing as what you were saying about Panarin. Like, yeah, you're not going to trade him for a first-round pick. That's not enough. Like, if you can re-sign him for more than, for a good amount, then, yeah, it makes sense to re-sign him. And if Stone re-signs, if Duchesne re-signs, then Stone will re-sign. So it's kind of, I think...
hand in hand.
Yeah, both of them are going together.
Yeah, although another thing they could potentially look into is relocation, if you want to do one thing with this team. So there you go.
Senators relocating to Toronto?
You mean Hamilton?
Hamilton, yeah, same thing, right? Sorry, Hamilton people. Okay, let's go San Jose Sharks, who now find themselves in second in the Pacific, winning 6 in a row. And the San Jose Sharks, I'll chime in on what they should do. I think that early on there was a pretty big struggle with Erik Karlsson and him kind of finding his way with a new team, and I think it's understandable. He's an unrestricted free agent. you have to sign him. You have to sign him. He needs to be re-signed. I think
I won't disagree with that.
He's proven now. Anybody that was doubting a little bit, like, oh, has he lost a step? No, he hasn't lost a step. He's been absolutely on fire the last 20 games. And so I think you lock him up, you give him the money he wants, assuming that he wants to stay there, and you make that not a part of the conversation.
Okay. Hey, fair enough. You know what? They have to get him signed. There's no doubt about it, because the assets they gave up and everything they did to bring him on board, really they need to get it signed. Plus, I mean, let's be honest, they're aging a little bit, so keeping him around would be a smart thing. For me, though, I don't necessarily know if that's the one thing that I would do for this team right now. For me, because for him, you can wait till the summer and still try to get him signed. For me right now, the thing to do is find a team with a good goaltender and make a trade.
Martin Jones. Huh?
Yeah, I love Martin Jones, but he has just not been very good this year. And
who would you get to replace him?
Jimmy Howard.
Okay,
he would be my number one candidate right now. Because
I feel like that name will come up for many teams struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're Jimmy Howard, I would probably jump on board with that, just because you're not going to get many chances in the next few years with the Wings to win. So yeah.
Yep. You can always come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come back in the summer. Let's go to the Philadelphia Flyers, who sit beautifully in 29th place in the NHL. They have Yuri Laterra, Wayne Simmons, Michael Raffle, all unrestricted free agents at the end of the year, as well as Brian Elliott, Michael Neuwirth, both on IR. What do you do with this kind of a team that I think we thought might be decent this year? Like they surprised us last year, and kind of like LA in the West, they have fallen right back down.
Yeah, they were my pick to win the division, surprisingly. That has not panned out.
Whoops.
For me, the one thing, trade Wayne Simmons, get a good asset in return, and ride the crap out of Carter Hart, whether he fails or succeeds.
Okay. All right. I like it. I think you also should be looking into moving, whether it's a Sean Couturier, Jacob Voracek, Claude Giroux.
Really?
It's not something that could really probably happen at the deadline, but I think that long term, you need to shake this team up. It's had the same core for 7-8 years now. Maybe winning Simmons leaving is enough to shake the core, but to me, it seems like you've got a guy like Nolan Patrick that you took second overall. You have Gostisbehere and Provorov and Sanheim, all guys who have come up through their system, and to me should be maybe more the faces of this franchise. Not necessarily Patrick, but or at least he hasn't proven yet that he can be that elite player. But it seems like maybe Giroux, Voracek, it's just not working. It really hasn't for a long time. They make the playoffs, they miss the playoffs. They make the playoffs, they miss the playoffs. They're not good enough beyond those guys, and those guys can't do it by themselves. And so maybe it's just time to reset. Okay, let's go to the Winnipeg Jets.
Ooh,
the Winnipeg Jets sitting at 29-14-2. They've won a couple in a row. And who would you move on the Jets right now?
Move? I'm not sure if you move anybody off their team. I think they need to find themselves a second line center more than anything else. Don't get me wrong, Brian Little's fine, but to me he's no better than a third line center.
Yeah, it's
at
the
this
Paul
point.
Stastny replacement that they never got.
And honestly, one name that I might take a gamble on, who you could probably bring in pretty cheap. Granted, they are on a bubble team right now, so they might not be willing to move him as quickly, but Jason Spezza.
Yeah, I think you've actually said that before.
Oh, you have.
I have.
You've talked about dealing him,
go.
but to Winnipeg, I don't know if you mentioned that before.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I just wonder if he's fast enough to keep up. That would be my concern. But the fact that Stastny, a guy who was a little slower and was more of a playmaker, defensive guy, I think maybe Spezza could play well with Line A. you're feeding him the puck. He's not a guy who shoots a whole lot. So
yeah, you look at a guy like that. I've been accustomed to watching over the last couple of years, Thomas Vanek, who isn't that fast anymore, but you put him with some fast guys who can score some goals, and he can succeed pretty decently.
All right, let's go with Chicago Blackhawks. $4.5 million in cap space, which that's really not their concern so much because they're far out of the playoffs now. Marcus Kruger, Chris Kunitz, both free agents at the end of the year, along with Cam Ward, who has done, I'll say he's been about what I would expect. Nothing.
That's fair.
Nothing better, nothing worse than what, than what he's given. What is he? He's probably a 900 save percentage type of season, which this team hasn't been that great either. I guess he's at 884 and a 399 goals against average.
Yikes.
This team, it's really a mess. To me, you gotta say goodbye to Mr. Bowman. I think Stan Bowman has. You already let Joel Quenneville go, and it's time to say, I think that you did great building a team. You have not done well sustaining a team, and so. Maybe you're thinking, well, because he did so well early on bringing in a team, and when we were bad, maybe he can do it again. And then, oh well, if we get bad again, we'll take 3 Stanley Cups if it means some down years. But don't forget that Dale Talon played a big role in building that team,
setting them up.
Dale Talon built that team, got fired. Stan Bowman came in, and a year later they won the cup. So you got to credit Dale Talon at least with that first Stanley Cup that was probably more his doing. And so to me, I think you just need to start over, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to reset, and I think that's where the Blackhawks need to go, I think it's time to unload Patty Kane. To me, that's probably your most valuable trade asset right now, what you're going to get the most in return. I think you'll get more than Erik Karlsson got, to be quite honest. And you got a young.
He's got 4 years after this year.
Yeah, but he's young. I'm not young, but at 30 years old, he's still fast enough. He's still smart enough with the amount of years left on that contract that teams will be okay with that. Even if they have to eat $1.5 million in cap, big whoop-de-doo, he'll still be freaking good for the next 4 or 5 years, anyways. But they got a young kid in there, Alex DeBrincat, who to me could be something that you can build a new team around. So you hit the reset button now, and you get going.
Is Alex DeBrincat really good enough to build around?
Maybe not good enough to build around, but he's a good piece to just say, hey, this is what we're going to start with.
Yeah, I think. To me, I'm not trading Patrick Kane because he just means too much. He's probably financially means more to that team than we understand, and sells more tickets than we can imagine.
I get that.
So I think he's worth keeping around. But I would just go the other way and say that Taves is probably the guy to move if you can.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Problem is that both of them have no movement clauses. So
yeah, I think if they could move anybody, it'd be Brett Seabrook, but.
Yeah, Seabrook. I could also like a Brendan Saad. Bad trade. Probably shouldn't have traded Panarin. Whoops. Okay, let's go with the Vegas Golden Knights. They're 5th in the National Hockey League at 28-16-4. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10, on an absolute roll. And this team has really, they have a few players who are unrestricted free agents, but all guys that are, third liner type of players, and so easily replaced. But does this team have a move in them to improve for another playoff run?
That's a very good question, because I think they went out and they made their move by getting rid of Neal and bringing in Stastny. And Pacioretty, he's starting to play well now.
Yep. Along. You got Pacioretty, you've got Paul Stastny and Nate Schmidt, all of who have missed time, and so I think you're finally seeing what a healthy.
Yeah, the only move, if anything, is finding a backup goaltender. I don't think Subban is good enough if Fleury goes down to carry the team. He was good last year, but this year he has not been so well. And I wouldn't take a chance on anybody else in the minors just in case, because this team's going to the playoffs and they're going to try to make a run at it again. So find somebody who can play in a backup role. Now, whether that might be like a Michael Neuwirth or, Hutchinson, because he might end up getting claimed off waivers from Toronto. We don't know what's going to happen with that. So,
we'll see. Also you consider the fact that Eric Howla, Colin Miller, and Riley Smith and William Carrier are all hurt right now. Just shows this team actually has some pretty significant depth.
Yeah, and that's what all those trades, pretty much built, which is why Seattle won't get lucky like that.
Exactly. Let's go to the hometown team here, the Detroit Red Wings. They have... I feel like this team has exceeded expectations despite where they sit in the standings. I don't know how you feel about their season. I know lately they've been on a slump, but
a big slump.
I feel like we've seen what you are hoping to see out of some particular players.
Yeah, absolutely. Nyquist has been better than expected. Larkin has been as good, if not maybe a little better than I expected him to be this season. Jimmy Howard's been great, carried the team to a lot of wins that they probably shouldn't have gotten. But for me, the one thing this team needs is future assets, and to do so, you need to start dumping some players. Nyquist, Howard, like I mentioned before, and maybe even going as far as Andre Athanasiou, who, got speed to burn, and he's exciting to watch. And I will say the one thing for this Wings team, even though they are losing a lot of games, they put up a good fight, they don't get blown out, and they're just fun to watch still.
Yep. What are you going to get for Nyquist? Could you get something for Thomas Vanek? Is he willing to move? Because Vanek signed that no trade clause essentially to say, you will not trade me at the deadline. I'm not going to be that guy.
Right.
But
or maybe to control his fate, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. So, can you get a similar return that you got for Tatar last year for Nyquist?
Maybe a second and a third for Nyquist, and I would be fine with that.
Okay. I'm just saying, do your best to trade whoever it is that you need to trade, whether it's Nick Jensen, Luke Witowski, Nicholas Kronwall, Nyquist, just move your free agents. That's what you have right now. Acquire as many assets as you can. Don't worry about quality so much as you worry about quantity. Trust the fact that you can develop players that you've spent time scouting that you see potential in.
Yeah.
Let's go to number 6 overall, Washington Capitals.
Ooh, the Cappies.
Yeah, the Capitals have they kind of started off with that little bit of a hangover, as we sometimes see, but they have really fired on all cylinders here, and they're right back towards the top of the league, top in the Metro, and but they do have quite a few pieces coming off the books next year. There's in their top 15 of forwards. They've got seven players that are free agents at the end of the year, and Brooks Orpik will be coming off the books as well. And so this team maybe has a little bit of a facelift on their bottom 6 forwards. What do they do here at the deadline to maybe weather that a little bit?
To me, I'm looking for some mobility on the back end, really. Don't get me wrong, I think the bottom 6 is something to be concerned with, but I think they've shown, especially last year, that guys like Lars Eller can step up from the bottom 6. Devontae Smith-Pelly, again, guys that can step up when needed. And I don't think they would probably worry as much about that come playoff time. But to me, I think, they've got a lot of slower pieces on the back end, guys that can't move the puck as well. So maybe find somebody with some mobility back there to move the puck out.
All right. Yeah. When I think of this team, they really have everything, because their top guys can play significant minutes, and so you can really limit your bottom 6 guys and set them up for success. And this team to me is one of those teams you go, yep, they're built for the playoffs, and they're just cruising right now, and they'll be ready to roll come playoff time. I guess you could say maybe they could look at shoring up that backup goaltending position. Phoenix Copley's been fine. Braden Holtby's been kind of funky. He's been kind of like he was last year, where he was really up and down. And, which one are you going to get come playoff time?
Right.
So to have that extra option, especially because of how good the rest of the team is, might be worth exploring. Okay, let's go...
Florida.
Go down to the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, Florida. To me, this is a team with a lot of good young talent. So more than anything else, I think they need a facelift in the front office. much like you talk about Stan Bowman needing to go, I think it's time to say goodbye to everybody at the executive level. Just get rid of, GMs,
presidents,
everybody. Yeah. They all need to go. Owners.
Relocate.
There you go.
Send them to, where could you go? Send them
Quebec.
to Quebec. Yeah. I mean, they're already positioned in that division to be right there anyway. So
yeah, and I think too because they do still have a lot of very, very good young pieces like Huberdeau, Barkov, guys that will be here for a while and are signed to very, very friendly deals. If you make the changes with the coaching level, the front office, then you can still fix this up.
Right. And I mean the fact that their second line center. Oh my gosh, why can't it? Trocheck. Yeah. He actually is ahead of schedule in terms of coming back. But I mean, you lose your second. How many teams in this league can lose? I'd say they're
Pittsburgh.
He's like second, third best player.
Yeah, he might be
one of the two. There's not a lot of teams that could lose that guy for the year and it not set them back pretty significantly. On top of the fact that they just. And Luongo's been hurt. That's the thing. So this team, they could maybe still make a little bit of a late run, I suppose. Like they did last year. They're 12 points out of the playoffs, but there's still lots of time. I think if there's one team that I look at out of the playoffs right now, that's significantly out of the playoffs. I'm not going to include Buffalo or Carolina in this, but I think they are the one team that maybe could turn it around and turn on a switch and make a run at it.
Yeah, their pieces are significantly better than when you look at like the Rangers and Jersey on paper. Right. So, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, let's go to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Your team, you first.
Is there anybody out there who doesn't think that they need a defensive upgrade?
Ding, ding, ding.
That's it. That's you need to figure out. To me, it's this. It's okay. You have a few guys. Obviously, you have to. Everyone knows they got to re-sign Matthews and they got to re-sign Mitch Marner. So between those two guys, that's going to take up basically the rest of the cap space. Maybe you figure out a way to keep Jake Gardiner. I'm not really too concerned about that. I'm thinking more. You also have to re-sign Kasperi Kapanen, who at the end of this year might have 30 goals. Yeah. You probably can't re-sign him with the rest of the guys. So,
well, luckily he's a restricted free agent.
He is restricted. But to me, that's where you say, we need defensive help. And I think that you could unload Kasperi Kapanen very easily. Now's not the time to try and trade William Nylander. I don't think that they're trying to trade him at all anyways. I do think long-term he's the better player over Kasperi Kapanen. So I think you look to move Kasperi Kapanen for a defenseman, and that's the chip that you use. I think you could afford to lose him, and with the addition of a vastly improved defense, if you're able to get a number one, number two guy for Kasperi Kapanen and a first round pick and whatever else you need to throw in there, I think that'd be worth it, and it would really change this team.
Okay.
So,
hey, speaking of which, our next team, the Rangers, a team that they do have a right-handed shooting defenseman that maybe Toronto might be interested in, and believe me, I don't think that
Kevin Shattenkirk.
Yeah, I don't think Toronto would be, or New York wouldn't be too upset about getting Kapanen in return. But do you make that deal?
For Shattenkirk, I just never liked him.
No? Okay.
When the Washington Capitals traded for him at the deadline, and
that didn't work out.
It just didn't work out, and you saw what happened when he moved out of the shadow of Parayko and Pietrangelo. It wasn't nearly as good. I think he's great on the power play, but the Leafs don't need a guy who's great on the power play.
No, they got enough assets to play there.
You need somebody who can carry a defensive pairing. Like Morgan Riley carries Ron Hainsey. We need another one of those.
He does. He certainly does.
So,
well, Rangers, though, they do have a couple other assets that are going to be UFAs that maybe they could move, like Zuccarello or Hayes. So, to me, maybe that's where you start.
Or an Adam McQuaid, who is still a very serviceable guy.
Absolutely.
For that bottom pairing defense, I think he'd be a
Teams
great
are
addition.
Always looking for depth on defense with guys like that.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, just acquire as many assets as possible. That's That's the trend for that team. Let's go Nashville Predators, who are in an unusual. Seems as though they've been playing better than where they sit in the standings. But I think maybe again this is just a team that's kind of floating right now, just kind of moving through the regular season. They're not worried.
No.
They know they're in the playoffs. They're going to be in the top 3 in this division, and so but Nashville maybe has more holes because they don't have that high end elite forward. So it puts a lot more pressure on all their forwards as a whole. And so when you have a bunch of lines that aren't scoring, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think ideally health is the most important thing for this team because they haven't really been fully healthy all year. They've had guys in and out, especially PK Subban, and this might be a direct correlation as to why they have the 6th worst power play in the NHL, which is what I think they need to maybe try to sort. Find somebody who can play on that second power play to give them some playmaking ability, whether that means on the back end or in a third line forward kind of role. But
yeah, I mean you get Kyle Turris, Salamaki back. Those are additions in and of itself.
Sure.
I do think that this is a team that they, sometimes when you have so many, it's like this team has a ton of second line players, a ton of them. And it's one of the reasons why they're good. Now, it's not to say that Ryan Johansson and Philip Forsberg aren't top line guys. Or Victor Arvidsson at times I think can be a top line guy. I think that he's probably ultimately on a Stanley Cup winning team. Victor Arvidsson to me is just a complimentary piece. I don't think that he's that high end type of guy, especially on the wing. But I feel like this team needs to make a bigger splash than they have, and that may involve maybe we should package a couple of our middle of the road guys, find a guy who isn't fitting in their particular role or particular place, doesn't want to be there, and move someone out for a superstar. And to me, that superstar is Artemi Panarin.
Wow.
Imagine Nashville bringing in Artemi Panarin.
It would be great, but
suddenly you've got...
Does he want to be there long term, though?
That is okay. I don't need him to be there long term.
Okay.
I need him to be here for 1 year, and I think that he's worth giving up what you need to give up to acquire him and go all in. Because to me, this team is this team this year has a chance, because when I look at the standings and I go, okay, Tampa Bay, unreal. Tampa, it's going to be hard pressed to beat Tampa Bay in the East. So let's assume Tampa Bay's in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Sure.
In the West, though, is it not completely wide open?
It is a lot more wide open, yeah.
Am I that scared of San Jose? No.
Or even
Am
Calgary?
I terrified of Calgary? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Winnipeg is the only team that I go, that's the team that could beat us. I'm not scared of Vegas. I think Nashville could beat Vegas. I think Nashville would have beat Vegas if they had played them in the playoffs last year, but they couldn't get past Winnipeg. So how do you get past Winnipeg? You need to match their superstar power, and I think that way is maybe an Artemi Panarin.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, let's move to the New Jersey Devils. Another team that's kind of surprised last year and has fallen back to normalcy, as Taylor Hall isn't having the greatest season of all time. He's hurt right now too, but he's no longer having a heart-winning season. So that's where the Devils sit. What should the Devils do though long term?
Boy, this is the most perplexing team in the league to me right now, because they should be to me, on paper, they look like they should be towards the bottom of the league, not like in the middle of the East where they're a little bit closer to right now. But, man, honestly, this is another team that just needs to, like the Rangers, acquire assets and just try to load up, honestly.
The one guy who I look and I go, I think you could get something decent for him, and I think it'd be worth moving him, is Andy Green. I think you move Andy Green. He's got 1 year after this at $5 million. I think that there are teams that would love to have that veteran presence, a guy who can move up and down your defensive pairings, can play with almost anybody. And then, of course, you're moving Marcus Johansson. who is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. You're probably not going to bring him back. And so I think that you see if you can acquire something better than the second round pick you gave up to acquire him in the first place.
Yeah, he's got enough offensive talent. I think a team desperate enough to upgrade, like you say, in Nashville maybe even might be willing to give a second rounder for him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay, let's head back up to the top and go to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who we've talked a lot about Panarin. Not much about Bobrovsky. We know that what were you saying? You listened to an interview with Kekalainen, their GM.
Yeah, he's talking about Bobrovsky and Panarin and saying how he is open to the possibility of moving these guys if the right long-term pieces come along. Now, he stated, too, in his interview that if he gets a first and a second, and that first is maybe like a mid-20-ish, number pick in the first round, that he's just going to keep these guys. Because like Toronto did last year with JVR, that's their rental piece right there. Those are the guys that they're going in on for
a far more significant rental.
Right.
It's like John Tavares was the Islanders' rental last year, and yeah, we saw how that worked out. But if he doesn't re-sign there and they keep him for this offseason, I feel like there could be, where this team kind of sold off Rick Nash for minimal pieces. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, they got Brandon Dubinsky is basically what they got in that deal, right? Like I know they got picks and they got some other things, but Brandon Dubinsky was kind of the big name in that one. And I'm hard pressed to say that Brandon Dubinsky has made a huge difference that they couldn't have acquired via free agency or something. And so to me, you take your chance on winning the cup. You've got, if you can get past Tampa Bay, you could win the cup in the East. Yeah,
honestly, I think all the other teams in the East that they could go up against, and, if Bobrovsky's, playing pretty good and the rest of their team is, doing what they're doing right now, they have a shot against. Now, they would have to get really hot against Tampa Bay, but the rest of the teams in the East, you could pretty much just say it's a coin flip at this point.
Yeah, agreed. Depending on what happens at the trade deadline, it should be pretty... It'll be a pretty sit back and let's see what happens here, because anybody's game in that. Let's go Arizona Coyotes, who to me this has just been a complete and utter failure. Even though their goaltender is hurt, I know
half
that
their team is hurt. Right now,
I know. Marian Hossa and Dave Bolin just not working out.
I knew you were going to say that,
but to me this just isn't working. There needs to be, a reevaluation of talent. No one's really panned out that you've got Clayton Keller going to the All-Star game. He's been fine, but if he's your best hope for the future, Clayton Keller, I think he's nothing more than a guy who's supporting really good players. I think he can be a 60-point guy in this league. I don't see much more out of him than that.
Yeah. Well, then you're talking about, a slightly better Gustav Nyquist, really.
Sure.
Which, every team would love to have. But, again, you can't build a team around that. You can't hope to be successful long-term with that.
And this team we know John Chaika has used numbers and statistics to build this team, and it has failed.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Moneyball type of guy. Don't get me wrong. I think it has its part.
It has its part, but you gotta balance.
Yeah, the eye test. You still got to use that eye test out there. I don't know. This could be a team that to me is another one where you just say relocation.
Oh, yeah, that's so. And maybe that's part of why this team's never taken off, because it's just so hard to build in such a turbulent type of environment. But nevertheless, just another failed season for the Arizona Coyotes, and it's just. Yeah. they are only 4 points out of the playoffs right now, but I just don't see this team going on any kind of tear. But
no, and they don't really have big assets to trade either, to where they can bring in top 6 guys to really long term make this team better. And if you look at free agents, right? Obviously they're not going to go out and snag Artemi Panarin in the offseason.
Sure.
But maybe they give Bobrovsky the most money and they could bring him in, which wouldn't be too bad.
But you've already got Ranta. You know that Ranta.
You could deal him though if you wanted to. Yeah, Ranta's definitely good enough.
I don't think Bobrovsky's going to Arizona.
No, but again, other players that are going to be free agents like Jordan Eberle, Mark Stone, or Duchesne or something, you'd have to throw a lot of money at those guys. But
yeah, maybe
that's where you look at
there for $10 million.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go Boston Bruins, who finally, for the first time all year, I think, what game was I watching? Just maybe it was a few days ago where they said that it was the first game this year that they had all their defensemen.
Wow.
So Boston back healthy. Tuukka Rask actually looks okay.
Yeah, he's taken back over that net.
He's been fine. And
been working out well for my fantasy team too.
Yeah, right.
I'm still undefeated.
Still undefeated. I think I'm 8-6.
Yeah,
so
I'm 4 wins ahead against everybody.
I'm hovering. Yeah, I mean this team once again is a team that they need to acquire some secondary scoring.
No, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. David Backes was supposed to be that guy. He hasn't really panned out. Maybe they were hoping Rick Nash would come back again and they could convince him to stay in Boston. Again, didn't work out. So maybe you go out and you try to, maybe they try to make a deal with a team like Edmonton, who, Puljujärvi is slightly available.
But if the Oilers are trading Puljujärvi, they want to get a roster player in return. So to me, Puljujärvi is only going to a team that is willing to give up a scoring winger at minimum. That doesn't seem to me to be a trade that I would think that the Oilers would make.
I don't know. Maybe you throw in like an Anders Bjork and a guy who has potential, and you throw in a pick there.
Yeah, but the Oilers aren't trying to go for potential here. They're going for winning. They're like, we have to win or I'm going to get fired.
Yeah, Chiarelli's at that point. For sure.
So yeah, Chiarelli will ruin another team. If he hasn't already done that. To me, Gustav Nyquist is a great piece.
Yeah,
he would fit perfectly with this team. You could slot him in anywhere in the top 9, and away you go. So a guy like him would be huge. Also, I do think that Artemi Panarin in Boston, he wants to live somewhere on the ocean. I don't see this not being a fit.
Maybe in the offseason. I don't think they have no, I mean, honestly, Danton Heinen or Ryan Donato, I would be more than willing to give up one of those guys, the slightest thought.
You give up a first-round pick, and you do have quite a bit of depth on defense. You could give up a defenseman. I think that there's got to be a prospect in their system that maybe Columbus likes, and all you have to really do is have Columbus eat $2.5 million of his salary, and you can fit him under your cap, and you're good to go.
There you go.
That would be a game changer. If Boston got Artemi Panarin, my God.
Yeah, that would make the East so much fun to watch.
St. Louis, they have actually found their way a little bit. They've been moving up the standings slowly. They've won 3 in a row now. They did beat Washington the last time they played, sitting at 20-20-4. So 3 points out of the playoffs. This team, like Florida in the East, if there's a team in the West that's out of it, St. Louis is the team that could come back and make the playoffs.
They do have enough star power to do it.
They do.
I will say that. To me, the one move you need to make at this point is just try to get rid of Jake Allen and give Binghamton the net at this point. I mean, it's only been 5 games for him, .941 save percentage at this point, but I think, honestly, he looks like a better option, and just ride the hot guy right now.
I mean, yes, that's fine. I don't think no one wants Jake Allen.
No, nobody does.
You're gonna have to buy him out. He'll be a buyout if there's a buyout available. I do think that you've got to evaluate where this team is at the trade deadline. Is it that important that you just squeak into the playoffs, or is it more important that you maybe get something for Jay Bouwmeester, for Carl Gunnarsson, and for a Patrick Maroon? Like, do you start moving pieces? And you got to think Braden Shen, only 1 year after this year on his contract, does he stick around long term? That's going to be a big question mark for the Blues going forward. Let's go with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Ooh,
very middling season for the Penguins.
Yeah, I will say though, it is nice to see. I mean, I honestly did not see it going this well for him, but Matt Murray has found his form again a little bit. He's been pretty good lately.
Despite a 5-2 loss to the LA Kings.
Oh yeah,
I think that's the most goals they've scored all year.
Oh, ouch.
So, but I mean, weird things happen. But I mean, Derek Brassard, Riley Sheehan, free agents at the end of the year. I mean, Pittsburgh is firmly in the playoffs at this point. They're third in the division, and so they're not going to move those guys. We know that. But is there a move that this team, they've been creative in the past. Are we thinking that they try to do something here, or are they just going to kind of stand pat?
I don't know necessarily if you have to make a big splash. There is one piece, though, and I was listening to NHL Network on XM Radio, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were talking about one guy in particular, Derek Brassard, a guy who, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent next year, but he's a guy who came into Pittsburgh and expected to be a top 6 player. Hasn't worked out that way. They played him, on that third line role, trying to balance the offense.
Sure.
I don't know why he expected he was going to get top 6 minutes behind Malkin and Crosby, but
is that really what he expected?
Yeah, that's what the guy they were. He was, I think, he was basically like their TV color commentator for their station out there, and
he's dumb.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I understand expecting power play time.
Right, maybe
second power play time. That's fine. He's gotten that, but. I mean, you knew you were coming in to be behind Malkin and Crosby. You didn't think you were going to play on their wing very often. To
me, this is the piece that I move because he's not coming back. He's not going to want to re-sign with you because, again, like I said, he wants top 6 minutes. I don't know at his age now that he can walk into any team and just get it automatically. But I think, for a team that's looking for scoring depth, that they're going to make a big run into the playoffs, they might be able to get a first rounder.
Why would Pittsburgh want to trade Brassard? Because they need him.
They definitely need him.
They're going nowhere without him. Then Riley Sheehan is your third line center again, and you have no fourth line guy.
Honestly, if you want my opinion, I think the guy Pittsburgh should target Brian Boyle and let him play third line minutes for them. He's not fast, but I think he could really be a great face-off guy. We know that. He can kill penalties, and I still think he has enough scoring ability to be decent on that third line.
Interesting. Okay. So, all right, let's go the Vancouver Canucks. A team that has they're about where I think we expected them, maybe a little bit higher, but $9 million in cap space. This team could be active at the deadline, not necessarily looking to acquire rentals, but I think that they may be able to take advantage of something. I think you got to look at your team now and go, I think we're actually a year, maybe 2 years ahead of where we thought we were because of how good Elias Peterson has been. And I know he's hurt right now, but this team should attempt to take advantage of somebody out there. Yeah,
I think you could look at a team that is maybe at the bottom of the standings, not necessarily at the very bottom, but that you could say, hey, we can go out and acquire maybe a very nice player who could develop into something pretty nice to build around. I don't even know off the top of my head. Maybe you look at St. Louis if they start falling out, right? Maybe you look at a guy like Jaden Schwartz. Maybe see if you can't poach him out of St. Louis for a first rounder or something like that. And
are you willing to give up your first round picks right now? Probably not.
Maybe not. But again, you've got they've got two very good goaltending prospects.
That's
and
true.
St. Louis would love one of them.
That is a great point. The goaltending prospects would be tempting. As well, Michael Del Zotto is a free agent, so you can always do that.
True.
Let's go with the Montreal Canadiens. They are in a playoff spot right now, sitting in the first wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Montreal, unexpected territory for them after having a really bad season last year. Carey Price has been only a little bit better this year than he was last year, but it's been enough to put them into the playoffs, and Shea Weber's playing like a madman since coming back. So does Montreal try to advance this plan a little bit quicker and acquire somebody, or are they just going to kind of ride this out?
I don't necessarily know because they're not going to make noise when they get in the playoffs. I mean, even if they somehow squeak in and get that number 8 spot like New Jersey, they're going to get maybe a win against Tampa Bay and at best. And that's because everything's going right for them. So to me, I think maybe you look at, maybe a guy like Jordy Ben, who even though he's been one of your better defensemen this year, more reliable defenseman, I guess, maybe see what you can get out of him. You've got enough pieces there where maybe you can, go in and, just get the younger guys experience basically. But to me, that's basically it. Just get the guys experience.
I think if you make the playoffs, cool, but you're not You're not expecting it. Anaheim Mighty Ducks lost 11 in a row, and out comes Bob Murray, says, don't worry, Randy Carlisle's job is safe, despite not being able to win since he has not won in the new year. He's not won this year yet. Hasn't won since, I think it was December 27th, or maybe it was before that.
Yeah.
Jakob Silverberg, unrestricted free agent. If they're not in the playoffs come trade deadline, is he gone?
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned it before in a previous show. He's the guy that you have to just pull the plug on at this point. You've waited long enough for him to, really be a dominant top six forward, and he hasn't been that. So time to say bye. Get what you can.
Yep, agreed. Let's go with the Anders Lee-led New York Islanders. Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Jordan Eberle, Valtteri Filppula, and Lucas Spezia, all free agents at the end of this year. This team kind of in an interesting position because maybe they could bring in another rental for cheap and make some noise. And maybe it's just not thinking we might win the cup, but thinking we need to do something for our fan base because they got screwed. Let's have fun here. Like, let's use one of our mid-draft picks. Let's see who we can bring in, shore up this team a little bit, and maybe we can win a round. I mean, this is a team, they're sitting in the playoffs. I guess in order to win a round, I suppose this team needs to get up into the third spot in the Metro, which they're only 2 points out of.
Yeah.
One win and they're third in the Metro, and Pittsburgh drops down. So, I mean, could the Islanders beat Columbus in a 7-game series? It'd be tight. That would be a stretch, but I mean, maybe they can make some noise and get in there. I think for the Islanders, if you're going to do something, you do something now as opposed to waiting all the way to the deadline.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I think, maybe try to find somebody on the back end, get a little veteran depth in there because they got some young pieces. I mean, they got Letty and Boychuk, who are your veteran guys back there, but they're relying heavily right now on guys like Ryan Pollock, Devin Taves, Scott Mayfield, and so I think maybe you find somebody with a veteran presence who can still play the game a little bit, like an Adam McQuaid, perhaps, who's been there before.
I like that.
Yeah, bring him in and let him, help out on that D back there, and then you don't have to rely on young guys with little experience.
Okay. Who wants to play with Connor McDavid? I mean, Edmonton may be the least desirable city in the National Hockey League, across, on average. But Connor McDavid, the most desirable player to play with. I mean, is there anybody who has made Patrick Maroon look better than Connor McDavid? That is really, it's not about going to Edmonton. It's about going to hang out with Connor McDavid. So who's going to be a good fit? Who can come alongside of him, or even maybe who can go, all right, we're going to bring him in and he's going to be able to play with Nugent Hopkins or with Draisaitl, and we'll play Nugent Hopkins with McDavid. But this team is desperate for a top 6 forward, and they will get it. I'm convinced they will get it. They will give up more than they should.
Really?
But I think Puljujarvi will be used to bring in somebody.
Okay, fair enough. I don't think they can acquire a top 6 forward at the deadline. I do think they have to wait till the offseason. And one name, he's quite familiar, and I think he would love to play with Connor McDavid, would be Jordan Eberle. He could cash in pretty decently, I think. He's
Jordan
still fast
Eberle
enough.
Coming back, yeah.
Yeah, nice. He's familiar. The only thing is the price. He's probably going to want around the same amount of money he's getting right now. Do you sign him to 7 years? No, I don't think he's going to get 7 years from anybody. Maybe 5 years. I could see it. But again, they got to find the cap space to do it.
The Edmonton Oilers trade Puljujarvi, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, some whatever prospect for Mark Stone. Maybe Stone. 2 first-round picks for our Mark Stone, who's willing to sign in Edmonton long-term. Mark Stone loves playing with Matt Duchene. But you know who he might love playing more with?
Who wouldn't love playing?
Connie McDavid. Okay, let's roll over to the Buffalo Sabres, who have kind of fallen out of that playoff picture. Not the picture.
Come back to earth.
They're out of the playoffs at this point. Yes, they've come back to earth. It's Carter Hart's looked a little bit more normal, and so do the Buffalo Sabres have what it takes to make the playoffs?
Carter Hutton.
I'm sorry, Carter Hutton. Yeah, I mean, they just lost 7-2 to Buffalo. I mean, if that's not a wake-up call, or 7-2 to the Edmonton Oilers, my God, if that's not a wake-up call, then I don't know what is. 3-6-1 in their last 10, and they've lost 3 in a row. They play Calgary tomorrow night, so it's not an easy game there to get back on the right track. But are the Buffalo Sabres going to make a move, or are they just going to sit where they are?
That is the $1 million question.
Is the $1 million question, will they re-sign Jeff Skinner, or are they just going to trade Jeff Skinner at the deadline, who they might be able to get 2 first-round picks for Jeff Skinner if Jeff Skinner's willing to sign an extension somewhere else?
They could get a king's ransom for him, although they already have 3 first-round picks already as it is for 2019, which having 5 wouldn't be too bad either. But
now, if St. Louis' 29 first-round pick ends up being a top 10 pick, the Blues have the option to keep it and send Buffalo to 2020 instead, which it is looking likely that it'll be a top 10 pick.
It very well could be. I do think, though, Jeff Skinner does re-sign in Buffalo. I think they have an owner who's willing to open up the checkbook. They found a guy who can put up 30, 40 goals and looks pretty dang good playing alongside Jack Eichel.
You're going to have to give him 9, I think.
I think they're more than willing to.
Okay.
And I think he'll get it. So, to me, I think this team is all about finding some bottom 6 scoring.
And then Pominville goes bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's get on over to the Minnesota Wild. We have 4 teams left. Minnesota Wild, again, they're right on that playoff bubble. I think right now they're in the playoffs as we speak, but a team that they actually have done well since we last talked, or better, I guess. They're 5-5 in their last 10, but they've managed to keep themselves in the picture. What do the Wild do here? Eric Stahl, a free agent. Eric Fair. You've got, I guess there's your Alex Dumba's been hurt, and so there's the main reason maybe why they've been just middling. But what does this team do? Are they pushing for the playoffs, or are they just going to finally go, you know what? It's okay, we can miss the playoffs, and we can build something.
They need to pull a New York Rangers, honestly. They need to, keep some young pieces around, like a Michael Granlund, maybe maybe that's it. But for the most part, I think they need to try to hit the reset button pretty quick. Do what you can. Maybe that means trading off Charlie Coyle. I honestly, Eric Stahl, he's gone at the deadline. You have to get what you can for him, because honestly, this team is just middled too much, too long in the West. They squeak in, get in, and then they're done because they can't make any noise in the playoffs against teams like Winnipeg and Nashville.
Yep. And I've said it before that I think they should trade Nino Niederreiter, but I think that there's got to be a way to figure out Nino Niederreiter and get him at least to a position where he's valuable.
And maybe that means trading or getting rid of the coaching staff, starting fresh there.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like Bruce Boudreau has just outstayed his welcome in Minnesota. For whatever reason, Bruce Boudreau is a very... I think players like to play for him, but players stop caring, I think, with him for some reason. I don't know what it is about him, but he just doesn't seem like a guy who actually can win in the playoffs long term. So, okay, let's skip on over to the Dallas Stars, who, hey, the owner or the CEO calls out the top 2 players on the team, Ben and Sagan, and basically calls them a bunch of pieces of shit. And wow, yeah, away we go. And hey, since he did that, it maybe been a little bit better. I just don't see what's the point in blaming those 2 guys. They're not the problem. The problem is, how about you go and you say, you know what, our GM has not been good, or maybe, hey, our scouting staff hasn't. I mean, although their scouting staff did scout John Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen, and I mean they've done a pretty darn good job there too. It's just the rest of the team that, in my opinion, unfortunately, Jim Nill has just not done a good job building the depth of this team the way that he should.
No, he hasn't really made those big moves, I think, that this team desperately needed when he came in, because they were practically the same team, just with terrible goaltending. Now their goaltending has pretty much carried them through most of the season to where they are now. They need some secondary scoring badly, and I think they need to I don't want to say like hit a reset button, but they need to make some big splashes.
Yeah, and the nice thing is you've got Jason Spezza at 7.5. You have Roman Polak at 1.13, and then Mark Mathot at 4.9, all coming off the books. So I mean that they have $21 million in cap space next year, and really, who do they need to re-sign? They need to re-sign Anessa Lindell, and they've got Julius Honka, both RFAs, but both will re-sign for reasonable amounts. And no forward that's going to get a lot of money. So, I mean, things are looking good. They also just made that trading Devin Shore for Andrew Cogliano, which I do like. I really like it.
Yeah,
Cogliano.
bringing some speed and
and
veteran
so
guy.
I thought it was a weird move for Anaheim, actually, but maybe there was something going on with Cogliano.
Desperation,
when he wanted
honestly.
out. Yeah, just trying to switch something. But I do like what they have, and the fact that they have so much cap space. They can bring somebody in the offseason. So I think that maybe you say, well, we're going to keep what we have. We maybe try to acquire somebody with term at the deadline. Don't go out and get a rental. I don't think that's in Dallas's best interest. But find someone with term that can become a part of the core of this team. Maybe not the like top 4 players, but maybe that secondary core. So that's
Kevin Hayes. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, Kevin Hayes. I like that. Let's go Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina Hurricanes. That they're basically where they've been for the last forever.
Forever.
About 2 positions out of the playoffs. Justin Williams, a free agent at the end of this year. Both goaltenders, McElhinney, Mrazek. I mean, they've got their defense locked up. We know they have a good defense. And what do? They won't move anyone on defense.
They need to.
They need to.
And they need scoring.
It might be Dougie Hamilton.
Maybe.
He might be the guy that you need to move. I think that you could move him and be perfectly fine. And, I mean, they need somebody who can score up front along with Aho.
Yeah.
They need it.
Who do you go after, though?
I mean, to me, their best trading partner, which we've talked about forever, is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay.
I mean, the Leafs couldn't afford to take on Dougie Hamilton, though. I think it would have to be, somebody.
Justin Falk?
A Justin Falk would work. I think that, would you be willing to trade Kasperi Kapanen for Justin Falk? That would just, to me, straight up.
Okay.
All of a sudden, Carolina has a guy who has the potential to score 25 to 30 goals.
Yeah, second-line guy who could be your Vincent Trocheck.
And Svechnikov has been coming on. So, I mean, suddenly you've got 3 very talented wingers. And your top 6 is filled out, and then you go out and it's that center position's tough. I mean, you might just have to draft that center position, or wait until something falls in your lap. But
yeah, I think you move a guy like Michael Furlan too at the draft, regardless if you're in the playoffs or not, because I don't think I've heard they've been having a rough time trying to come to an extension. So I think you move him and you try to get maybe a conditional second round pick. To try to find that centerman.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's go Colorado Avalanche, a team that has kind of defied odds because of how good that top line has been, and yet they still can't seem to get out of that. They're just better than missing the playoffs. I think this team's in the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. But I mean, 2-6-2. They just beat the Leafs 6-3. Granted, 2 of those empty net goals, but they beat a Leafs team who has kind of struggled since getting William Nylander back. It's kind of been a little bit of a weird dynamic there, I think. Even though William Nylander has actually played really well, and since Nylander came back, the Leafs are actually like 3rd in the league in possession, and they're better than they've been all year in possession. Wow. And Nylander's been great in that sense. He just hasn't put the puck in the net, and so once he starts doing that, I think their fortunes change. But back to Colorado. I mean, this team to me needs, if there's a secondary scoring, I mean, we talk about that for Boston, but this team needs it maybe the most out of any team that we would consider to be a good team.
Yeah, and I think when you look at their top line, right, once you get past those 3 guys, the next closest score is a 24-point drop-off with Carl Soderberg.
Yep.
So there's your problem, honestly. That gap should be a little closer. It shouldn't be drastically closer, like 5 points, but you should be within 10, 12 points, I think, of the next Next closest guy.
Yeah, I mean that'd be the hope. I'm going to just pull up Edmonton's because this is amazing. Edmonton, Connor McDavid with 28 goals, Draisaitl 24, Chason with 17, Nugent Hopkins with 15, Darnell Nurse with 6, and then you have Lucic, Cassian, Brodzniak, and Puljujarvi with 4. Ooh. 6th in the team in scoring with 4 goals. That's horrible depth. But yeah, it's just who would the Colorado Avalanche be able to bring in for almost like you'd love to see what would it take to get Jeff Skinner if he wasn't willing to re-sign in Buffalo. Yeah. Boy, would he ever look good there. But do you think, but if Jeff Skinner isn't playing with Patrick Eichel or isn't playing with one of our top guys, how good is he going to be? And maybe that's where really it's that second line center position that, I mean, frankly, you gave up Duchesne and now you don't have a second line center.
Well, they were hoping that maybe what's his face, Tyson Yost would eventually fill in there. Sure. I think honestly their best thing to do is wait till the offseason, go after maybe, give a 3-year contract.
Brassard.
Yeah, Brassard, give him a 3-year deal and say, hey, you can play your second line minutes like you want to. And they got some decent, guys like Kerfoot, like I said, Tyson Yost, who could pan out pretty well on the wing for him. So maybe they develop a little bit better when you got a guy who can actually play a second
and you're not,
position.
and it's not to say that Tyson Yost can't develop into that second line position. It's just he's 20 years old. Not every 20-year-old becomes Mitch Marner or a freaking Mikko Rantna, whatever.
Yeah.
So, Colorado Avalanche are probably the worst, most fun team to watch.
Wow.
They have such a good first line that really they are New Jersey of last year. Really they should probably be out of the playoffs, but because of how good that line is, they're unreal. It makes them look like they're so good, but it's just that one line carrying them all day. So
there you go.
Well, that is all 31 teams. Only one's missing. That's
Only one.
Seattle. The Seattle, whatever they become. The Metropolitans for now.
Yep.
Because that was the last team in Seattle. Or maybe they'll be the Seattle Silvertips. Remember the Everett Silvertips was in the ECHL or something like that?
Yeah.
And I have a jersey of the Everett
really?
Silvertips. Yeah, I don't know why. I found it on the online somewhere.
That's great.
So we'll call them the Seattle Silvertips for now. It makes it sound like we're talking about their penis, but let's right now where they sit, we're a year and a half away from them becoming a team and doing their expansion draft. What would you like to see them do by the end of this season?
Take Kenny Holland off Detroit's hands.
Praise him. So Stevie Yzerman can sneak in there.
Right, exactly.
How sad would Red Wings fans be if Steve Yzerman ultimately went and became the Seattle GM?
I think people would revolt and burn the Little Caesars Arena to the ground. It's just a matter
of time before Steve Yzerman takes over. And then, Detroit will be back on their winning ways because Steve Yzerman is fantastic. He built this Tampa Bay team. It's crazy to me that he wasn't just like, hey, I'm, after this year, I'm going to step down or something, something like that. But
right.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know what's best for him and his family, but I'm going to pretend I do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. For your penis tips, what do you think, what do you like? What should they do?
Well, I think that now is the time to start, Las Vegas did this a little bit. They went out and who is the guy that they signed right away from Russia? It was the first guy they signed.
Oh, yeah.
He ended up,
going back to Russia.
That whole deal. I think that you could be proactive and you could go to players and you could go, hey, look, you're a free agent at the end of this particular year. We want you to come and be on the first Seattle team. And I think that you figure out a way to start setting up free agents from Europe to come over and play for your Seattle
Just send
team.
them fish.
Especially from Russia, because if you think out of any team, that Seattle is close to Russia. I mean, it's the closest to Russia that you have aside from Vancouver, which is an hour and a half away from Seattle. So I think that there will be a draw for players who want to have a shorter ride home. I mean, that's a 4 hours less of a plane ride home.
Wow.
That's got to make a difference to me. So that's probably where I would start, is look for some good Russian players that you can get under contract and start talking with them now, so that midway through next year you can get them under contract and then they can come in and be a part of your organization. And who doesn't want to be a part of something new?
There you go.
Kind of cool.
Okay,
well, that is our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We will talk to you guys very soon. Promise it'll be more shows, more often, all the time, forever and ever. Amen. Have a good one.